Now I've heard everyone else's opinion on Chris Eubank and Chris Eubank Jr. And I thought I'd add my little 2 cents into it for what it mattered. For those of you who know of me and know about me will know I used to box beforehand, and in part of my amateur career was down in Sussex. For those who don't know where Sussex is Brighton, and I actually used to train in a gym called Savages. Now that gym is no longer around, but it was based, and my trainer Keith and Ronnie Davis were very good friends. Now in my time when I was training, Howard Eastman would come to the gym and Chris Eubank would come to the gym to support the local Sussex, the Brighton fighters or Hove based fighters. Our gym was actually based in Port Slade. So for those of you who know Sussex, Brighton, Port Slade was up outside Port Slade train station. You take the truck around the corner, from the train station you get round the corner to the main road where the if I'm right, I think there's just a train that the train can go over, like a sort of crossing. If you go up that and you take it, then you go to the top of the hill and you take another right, it would be down the back of there. That's where the gym used to be. And Keith was a very good trainer, from what I remember. Very, very good trainer. But my point is about the Eubanks. I knew the Eubanks because before I flew out to the States, I took a lot of time to talk to Chris about my career, what I wanted to do, and what I asked his advice as a champion. And he was still WBO champion at the time. It was actually the fight before he fought Steve Collins, actually, that I last spoke to Chris. And Chris is a very shrewd man, a very intelligent man, and don't let the monocle and all the bravado fool you. He's a very, very wise man, and listen to me when I say this. His whole mentality was about being able to be a man, to be able to absorb punishment, be able to absorb it, and then to be able to dish it out and to be able to take it. That came from his upbringing in the States and training in the States. So you have to understand, Chris Eubank isn't like a lot of the British fighters. The time he had in New York, I think, helped him a lot, and he developed into be one tough man. If Eubank didn't have the chin that he had and the mental resolve and the strength, there's no way he'd have been the champion that he actually was, because his chin was that good. It was that good, and he could take that much punishment. And that's why he was able to beat Nigel, because he was able to absorb more punishment than Ben in obviously the first fight. And obviously the Michael Watson fight is another example of how durable and how tough Chris Eubank was as a fighter and as a man. Now his son, Chris Eubank Jr., I knew him and his younger brother as well. They used to come over to the park in Hove. Now I can tell you this much as well about Eubank: a very, very strict father, and he would not want anything more or anything less for his sons than for them to be alike himself. They won't want them to be an embarrassment. So people are saying, well, where are you going with all this, Ingram? Well, I'm going to explain that if you give me a second. Eubank in no way, shape or form is going to want, let me close these windows, in no way, shape or form is going to want his sons to embarrass him. No way. So he will ensure that his sons get the best possible training if they're going to box, and he's going to ensure that they learn as much from him and the way he did things. Now Eubank was a good counter puncher. He was never a very good come forward fighter. Every time he'd go off balance when he came forward as a fighter, but he was very good as a counter puncher. That was his style, bring you onto shots. And I believe that Chris Eubank Jr. would have had an extensive amount of training behind closed doors, where he probably got beaten up pretty badly as a fighter, and took a lot of shots and learned to absorb a lot of punishment as a fighter. And I believe Now, him when I says, I believe Chris Eubank Jr. is a lot better fighter than people actually want to give him credit for. Yeah, I want you to forget about for 1 second Eubank and all the bravado and all the posing. Forget all that stuff a second. Forget that stuff, because that's where a lot of fighters lose it. They get caught up in all that. That's the way the man's selling himself. And a lot of fighters today, British fighters, don't know how to sell themselves. And that is what the crossover market is. That's why Naz was a superstar and an entertainer. He could fight a bit Naz, but his entertainment value, you know, entertainment. A lot of guys don't know how to market themselves, and that's why today in British boxing we don't have the characters that we had of yesteryear. Everyone wants to be nice and quiet and humble, and you know, it's the guys that are quite loud and a lot of bravado. They're the guys that people want to see fight, either for them to win or for them to lose. Let me go back to Chris Eubank Jr. So as much to say as this, his training with the Mayweathers. I don't know if you remember when Eubank, before he's going to turn pro, and when he did turn pro, who he was training with and who he was working with in quiet. You know, obviously the Mayweather training and all the rest of it. I'm convinced that Eubank is probably sparring guys that are better quality than the guys he's actually fighting at the moment. Okay, Eubank Jr. hasn't got no Olympic gold medal, or he hasn't had no you know, world championship background as an amateur. But what he has had is extensive sparring against some of the best fighters in the world, and I think that in itself, some of the guys that Eubank Jr. is sparring with, he's probably taking his lumps and his bumps in training against some of the best in the world. I believe that, and I believe that Eubank Jr. will raise his game. You see, somebody like Eubank Jr. is going to antagonize and wind a lot of these fighters up. So I believe in myself that Eubank Jr. would have been, basically, pardon my French, had the shit beaten out of him. I really believe that, because his father would have had the shit beaten out of him, and it would have been no nonsense. So his father would have been strict, and I think he would have tried to, you know, he would actually say to his son, look, this is what I did as a fighter, these are the mistakes I made as a fighter, so now you have to improve in it. And if you look at Chris Eubank Jr., he's a better boxer than his father, because this guy can go forward, this guy can go back, this guy can move side to side. Eubank Senior could only move going backwards. He was awful coming forward as a fighter. So the question marks are, has he got, if he's got a chin like his dad had, this guy's going to go places. Now, Eubank wasn't a massive one-punch knockout artist. Not at the top level he was, no. You know, the Mexican road sweepers, yeah, he looked good, he could knock guys over. But he had respectable power. He had a fantastic chin, an ability to absorb a lot of punishment, good counter-punching ability, and a way of outworking opponents and psychologically getting into your mindset. So a lot of guys got so mad with Eubank, they forgot their game plans and they came walking straight at Eubank and tried to knock his head off. And Eubank, being a counter puncher that he was able to counter these guys, you know, win the first 6 rounds. And once he won the first 6 rounds, you watch Eubank win the first 6 rounds and then coast for the next 6. So he knows himself, look, the most you can do is get a draw with me. So that's why for most of his career he was able to do that, until Collins just put pressure on him all the time. And now by that time Eubank had gotten a lot older in his career. Now, I think a lot of people can get caught up in their character. I'm not the fighter. I think Eubank is a better fighter than he's been given credit for. And I think that while this time we're just saying, oh, he's fighting this bum and he's fighting that bum and he's fighting this bum, he's fighting that bum, he's actually becoming a better fighter behind closed doors. That's my suspicion. And I believe when he actually is unleashed on the British scene, he's going to cause some upsets. Because a lot of guys are going to want to have a row with him. And I think as they decide to have a row with him, guys that probably may have the better pedigree may lower themselves and allow themselves to get drawn into battle and would suit Eubank. I'm not saying Eubank is the best fighter in the world, best super middleweight in the world. I wouldn't say that. And I don't think his father was the best super middleweight in the world, because at that time there was Roy Jones, there was Michael Nunn, there was James Toney, and God forbid there was, bless his heart, Gerald McLennan. There are 4 guys there, you know, and then there was the draw he had against Nigel Benn, and of course you had Steve Collins. So there were guys around Eubank's time that he never faced. He never faced. So if his son is able to emulate half of what his father did, he's done good. If Ronnie Davies is saying he's going to be a world champion, I don't think Ronnie Davies will take lip service. I don't think he's one that, from what I've gathered, Ronnie Davies, not lip service. So my opinion on Chris Eubank is this: you need to watch this guy carefully. I know a lot of British guys, oh, where's Billy Joe Saunders, this and that. I'm not saying Joe Saunders isn't a good fighter. Don't get me wrong. But don't get caught up in the fact that at the moment he's not fighting anybody decent. I think when he steps up, you know, I think you're going to find that Eubank is at that level. What I won't tell you is he won't get beat by Andre. Andre Ward's the only super middleweight that he would get beat by, because I can tell you, GGG may have something to say about that. George Groves may have something to say about that. Carl Froch may have something to say about that. James DeGale may have something to say about that. So there's 4 or 5 fighters there already that may be a challenge for Eubank. But good management, selecting the right opponents at the right time, and as I said, if he's as tough as his old man was, and he's determined, and he's stick it like his old man did, there's no reason why Chris Eubank Jr. can't go on to be a force in the super middleweight division or the middleweight division, in my opinion. Yeah. So, and I think he's getting stronger as well as a fighter. His KO record's going up. So those are my thoughts based on what I know of Chris Eubank Senior. There's no way in hell that he would let his son make a mockery of the Eubank name. He would, in my opinion, I don't know how true this is, but he would watch his son take a shellacking in training behind closed doors before allowing him to go out in the ring and make a fool of himself in public. So those are my thoughts on Chris Eubank Jr. I wish there was somebody who could confirm this but hopefully soon I'll be able to find out more information, maybe get an interview with Mr. Eubank, catch up on old times. So those are my thoughts on Chris Eubank Jr. and Senior. I'd love to hear what you guys have got to say. I'm sure a lot of you will turn and say, well, Billy Joe Saunders is going to beat him. We'll have to wait and see. Billy Joe Saunders is on his own journey, and I think he's ranked number 1 by the WBO now for Peter Quillen's title. I really don't think he's going to take a step back at this point in time. If you're WBO contender, I'll worry about Chris Eubank Jr. I think he's going to worry about Peter Quillen. That's logically, I think that's what you would do. But yeah, those are my thoughts. Let me know what you think. I'm out.